Hello, emerging and evolving leaders. I'm Christine Rozier, host of the Irrelevant Leader podcast and founder of the Leadership Collaborative and Rozier Retreats. My platforms are dedicated to expanding the pool of exceptional leaders. I'm honored to be your leadership expert today. I believe that every person has the potential to become an extraordinary leader, and in doing so, significantly impact the lives of others. Extraordinary leadership begins with mindset. Relevant leaders are committed to developing the qualities necessary to successfully lead others, qualities that are cultivated and refined over time. Throughout the Irrelevant Leader podcast series, some of the world's most relevant leaders and I examine the behaviors and characteristics of irrelevant leaders. Tune in as we dig deep into identifying what goes wrong when a leader moves down the path from powerful leadership to ineffectual leadership. Join me for live call-in sessions, one-on-one interviews, and thought leadership segments as high-profile leaders and I explore what it takes for you to avoid the blight of dreaded irrelevancy and outline how you can achieve and maintain your place among the world's most profound and relevant leaders. Thank you again for listening. Let's get to today's episode. Welcome to our episode. I'm extremely honored and thrilled to have as my very special guest today, Secretary of State Elaine Marshall. In 1996, Secretary of State Elaine Marshall became the first woman ever elected to a statewide executive branch office in North Carolina. Voters re-elected her to a seventh term in 2020. A former teacher, small business owner, and private practice attorney, Secretary Marshall was elected to the North Carolina Senate before rising to the statewide office. Under Secretary Marshall's administration, more than 1.5 million businesses have been formed. She has pioneered e-commerce in government, protected investors and intellectual property owners, and promoted financial capital formation in North Carolina. Secretary Marshall has been very active in many civic groups in all areas of child welfare, women's issues, and agriculture and small-town economic development. She credits 4-H as an important part of her youth. She is also past president of National Association of Secretaries of State. She holds a B.S. in home economics from the University of Maryland and a law degree from Campbell University. She has received honorary doctorate degrees from Campbell University, Lees McRae College, Meredith College, and the Republic of Moldova State University of Medicine. Since becoming Secretary of State, she has received numerous state and national awards for leadership in technology, government innovation, and women's leadership. She is married to Jesse Thomas Bunn. Thank you, Secretary Marshall, for being here.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm delighted to be here.
So let's get started. You exemplify what it means to be a relevant and extraordinary leader, and the voters in North Carolina confirmed that once again in 2020 when they voted you into the seventh consecutive four-year term. So a few questions about leadership. As a leader, what does relevance mean to you?
Well, relevance to me means you're effective in your job. Now, there are different pathways to become effective in your job, and I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but it means doing a good job. Doing a good job has a lot of aspects. It's the public facing. There's the internal operations. It's how your employees feel about you. It's how the outside shareholders feel about you, stakeholders, shareholders. So it's being effective to the folks you need to be effective with. So I think also being a relevant leader means that you're inspirational and motivational. And I think there's a difference between inspirational and motivational. Inspirational is where you hope that you develop something inside somebody that they can see, visualize, and perhaps carry through with, whereas motivational could have a couple other aspects of motivation, like punitive, if that would become necessary. But, setting up avenues of responsibility where there are measurements, and if folks fall short of that, motivate people in a more positive way so that that shortcoming doesn't come up again.
Thank you. I love the distinction between motivation and inspiration. Because I too think those are very different things. I think sometimes they can be confused, and one being internal, as you said, and one being external.
Right. Yep.
That's great distinction. Thank you so much. Have you always been a natural leader, or is it something you've developed over time?
I wouldn't say I was a natural leader. You and I had lunch together, and I told you what my parents were told, and they don't understand where it came from. What my parents were told was that every time the teacher said, "Could somebody do?" and my hands sort of went up. I think that was an overstatement, but somewhere along the line, I did learn to volunteer. I saw it from my parents. We lived in a small rural community. My mom was a farmer's wife, stay-at-home mother. She did a lot of church work. She did fire company work because the community and the fire company were one and the same, and the fire company had to raise money, so it was done through what we called public suppers. These were banquets. People would buy tickets, and she would volunteer me. I would be waiting tables, and she would be the gravy lady. She could make gallons of gravy, and it wouldn't be lumpy at all. I never learned that from her, but Mom was that, and my father also volunteered with the fire company and the church. But when you're a church of 35 people or 10 families, everybody's got to volunteer to get something done. So maybe it was necessity. But then I picked up skills in public education and with my public education, and also skills through 4-H. When you read the introduction about the credit I give 4-H, learning parliamentary procedure, learning how to organize a meeting, how to make a speech, all those kinds of things were skills that we had fun in 4-H, but we didn't know it, but we were developing life skills at the same time.
How wonderful. What a great organization 4-H is.
Amen.
What a great organization. What are some of the ways and practices that you engage in remaining relevant? You've been in leadership for so long.
Well, that is harder, and the longer it goes, I feel it's a challenge because people who don't know you and think you've been there a while may think there's nothing new that you can learn, nothing innovative about what you're doing, been there too long. I have to face my bosses every 4 years at the ballot box, and that isn't exactly a fair business evaluation, performance evaluation. Politics does get in the way. So you've got to be innovative. You've got to be a student of the future. I don't consider myself a futurist at all, but I would like to and do have opportunity to business leaders, the communities that we serve, and ask them, where do you want to see the Secretary of State's office 5 years from now? Or where do you see your company 5 to 10 years from now? And when you have that conversation, you can glean what they need from an organization that does business infrastructure support. And let me tell your viewers, you learn a lot about Secretaries of State from the national news and the conduct of elections. And there are about a third of us in the whole country that do not do elections, and I'm one of them. So I do not administer elections. I don't do anything with voter registration. So that's another responsibility for another organization. That doesn't mean we don't get the nasty calls sometimes with unhappy people, but we take that in stride. But to try to figure out where the future is going, and then is that good for North Carolina? Because that's what it's all about. It's all about economic development and how we can better fit in and ease that pathway to what businesses see as their future.
Thank you. And what a great characteristic in remaining relevant. I think it is the primary characteristic of continuing to learn. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Lifelong learning.
Lifelong learning.
Yes.
Trying to, as best you can, vision what the future holds and then adapt to that. And
what's interesting is that my chief deputy, who has been with me for the whole time I've been there, is also a lifelong learner. But he is a totally different person with totally different instincts and the ways that he learns. I used to get the New York Times, and I now only get the Sunday because I can't read everything. Rodney absorbs everything. He does a lot of reading on a lot of science things. He's a geologist by training, so he's more into the science zone. And so I'm more into inspirational, artistic, creative zone. And so together,
yes,
we're covering a lot of bases that one person can't cover.
Yes, perfect pairing. That's what I'm hearing. It's the perfect pairing.
I don't know that it's perfect, but it's pretty good.
That's pretty darn good.
Yeah, right.
We'll take that, right? So if you were thinking about what would be three of the most important characteristics for relevant or extraordinary leaders, what would those be?
There's some real simple rules. Listen more, talk less. You've got to absorb what's going on around you, whether it's your employees, whether it's the stakeholders, whether it's the world in general. You've got to listen more. That's one of the traps that politicians fall into. As soon as there's some breaking news, there's somebody with a camera in your face. What do you think about it? And generally, you don't have enough information. And yet the media expects an answer. So it's hard sometimes to say, well, when I learn what it's all about, I'll tell you. That's kind of a passive response that the public may not like, but I think it's a very safe response. So listen more and talk less. I would say the next thing is I can hear my mother's voice in my head, something to the effect of, don't forget where you came from. She was very much a person who said, I think I see the big head coming on. So big head was not a good thing. And don't outgrow your upbringing, those kind of things.
Yes.
Don't outgrow your britches. My mom pounded that into me as a person that, no, I didn't come from a privileged family. Nobody was a big shot in my family. So, anytime she thought that I might have been edging toward a little bit of that, I got told immediately. So don't get the big head. Yeah. And then the third thing I would say is treat everybody with dignity. You never know who that important person is going to be tomorrow. It may be the person that does the janitorial work at your office. It may be that person who is bussing the tables at the restaurant. People that ignore those service people and other people do a terrible mistake in their life. There are legendary stories of folks, say like the athletic teams who travel and, perspire in their uniforms and get them dirty and messy, and they treat the people that are supposed to get the uniforms cleaned and back to them terribly. They just ignore them. That once in a while somebody doesn't have clean socks to put on. Oh, they forgot to do it. And they don't have the clean shirt. They do have their ways of getting back at you if, so people, everybody, there's dignity in their work. I'll tell you one thing that we did. At the Secretary of State's office, we've always had Employee of the Year. And after about the second one of those, when I was in office, I saw how everybody got revved up because it's a total employee thing. I never know until the day before. The nominations go into an employee committee, and then that committee tells who the finalists are and who, they've decided. And people do make recommendations to that committee about why this person ought to be honored. And so I saw the great joy, surprise on the part of the employee, and great joy, enthusiasm by the rest of the employees. And I thought, that person has a family. They ought to know how respected and loved their parent is for being a team player, making a contribution to the economy of North Carolina, that their coworkers think enough of them to honor them in this way. And ever since then, the person who is winning, we get a hold of their family. We do it at our holiday party. We keep the family sequestered someplace away from them. And when I get to doing this, we do it in a room where I can see down this hallway, and the audience is out there away, and they can't see out the hallway. And so sometimes I see little kids with flowers in their arms, just really, and grandparents coming, or girlfriends, whatever. And when their person gets named and they come up, and then their family comes out and hugs them, there hadn't been a dry eye in the place for years.
I'm sure.
Because we're showing the dignity that person has in the office and the love that their coworkers have for them. And, I know every day, or sometimes when they come home, they haven't had a good day at the office, and maybe they don't have time to do things with the kids, or they get a little short with somebody. They need to know, the family needs to know that what mom or dad is doing is really a good thing, and it's a valued thing.
Wonderful. Very important characteristics, those three. I'm going to focus in on your mother's teaching, because I was going to ask you how, after 26 years in this office and in this role, have you remained so grounded? Because you seem very grounded to me, and still very much a service mindset.
I will tell you that there are what some people would call elites in this state, whom have never warmed up to me, have never contributed financially, and a lot of the people that do give, I have felt like I was not elite enough. I did not go to a school here in North Carolina for undergraduate, and I didn't have connections. And so there are vibes that people give out that I had early in my career. It's not so much now, but earlier in my career. And there was no way. First off, I wasn't interested in changing myself to get their respect or contribution. I am what I am. I would hope that they would spend a little more time with me to find out I do have depth in some areas. I may not have it in every area, but I have felt excluded by some you would call elite leaders in the state. The office that I hold is not well known, and it's known for something we don't do, which is kind of funny. But, the office is one of the steady, Freddy worker bees of government, because we have been starting businesses right and left since June of 2020. We are just experiencing a real rocket level of new LLCs and corporations. So I'm pulling my weight and doing what I need to do for the state. We always can do more, but I am what I am. A lot of people have observed me as a politician and as an office holder, and just have amazed that I'm approachable, I'm relatable. A lot of the people out on the campaign trail are just like my family or the people I grew up with. They're not going to put on any different clothes to come to an event. They've come out of the fields. That's fine. I grew up with that. Glad to see them there in whatever vehicle they came in and whatever dress they have. They are people. They're one of God's children. They should be treated with dignity and respect. So,
absolutely. Well, I, as one of those North Carolina voters, truly appreciate your groundedness and your approachability. It's been delightful getting to know you. So you mentioned one of perhaps what you might call a struggle, or what I might call a struggle on your journey into leadership. Can you share other struggles or another struggle you might have had during this career?
Well, believing in yourself.
Okay.
I never thought big enough for myself. Never thought I would be a lawyer, because in high school we had career day. There wasn't a lawyer there at all. There certainly wasn't a female lawyer. I didn't really think I could win elected office because I never saw an elected woman official, and to think that I went from that to being the first woman statewide for executive office is just almost like unbelievable. So having confidence in myself, I had to build.
Yes.
And there are challenges I have today that I have to build myself up. I have to work harder, I think, than anybody else to get ready for something. That's a trait that a lot of women have. We just got to do more, better, longer, stronger.
Yeah.
So I try to get better prepared, or else I don't say anything. If I'm not sure that what I'm about to propose is reasonable, it's accurate, I don't. That was one of the things that the News and Observer, when I was in the North Carolina Senate, my first session, called me the Rookie of the Year. And one of the things they said, that she doesn't always talk, but when she talks, she has something to say. Because there are plenty of people in the legislature that talk and talk and talk. So.
Without much to say, if I may add.
Yes, okay.
So if you were looking back and having a discussion with your younger self, your early leader self, what guidance would you offer that earlier self?
The first thing I would offer the earlier self would be study in college. My parents wasted some tuition money, I'm sorry to say. I did not buckle down. I thought I was going to be a 4-H agent. I knew how to be a 4-H agent, sort of. I was taking the courses that, would get me the degree I wanted there. But I did not buckle down on things like economics, English. If I work at it, I can be a real good writer, but I didn't concentrate on some of those basic subjects that I should have, because all I was looking for was a passing grade. If I had an A in home ec and a passing grade in other things, that was okay with me. So I didn't set high enough standards, and I didn't buckle down. I just, now I buckled down in law school, that's for sure. But I just didn't take advantage of all the educational things that were there for me to take advantage of. And so that's bad on me, I'm sorry to say. And that would be my advice to my younger self, get a better foundation.
Great advice. And then the struggles are not so deep and strong later in life, are they?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
It really eases eases those challenges later on. What are your thoughts on the Great Resignation?
Well, we have had some of that in state government, but it's more salary competition, the outside world. I don't have a very high turnover once you get to the midpoint of the salary ranges with us. People like working for the Secretary of State. They like being a part of the economy. They understand what they do. They understand that folks that are coming to start an LLC or a corporation or one of the other entities have hopes, dreams. They have a passion. They're going to do something to improve their life or their community. And so they understand that. They truly understand that. In the world out there beyond state government, I think a lot of people, the pandemic caused a lot of people to think about how they wanted to work, their peace of mind. There wasn't a whole lot of peace of mind going on in the business world at that time, and people wanted to take charge more of their lives, women in particular. The problem with inconsistent school, the problem with lack of daycare that previously was there. I mean, daycare issues are a big problem for women, pandemic times or otherwise. We just need more affordable, available daycare for children. So I think a lot of women felt those pressures and decided to either take a hobby and make it into a career, or they negotiated with they had a skill set from an employer, and they decided to become that skill set as an LLC and then market themselves to other companies doing, and maybe even their prior company, because they knew what it was. And the prior companies were happy to not have to do the payroll and all that stuff that goes with having an employee, and still get the benefit of somebody that they had trained. And that person didn't have to maybe put up with some of the bureaucracy that they were putting up with in the corporation. They became their own bureaucracy, but own responsibilities like that. So I think now the commentary from folks is that a lot of folks that did the Great Resignation are thinking maybe the grass is not as greener on the other side as it is with an employment status. Things will equal out, whether it's hybrid working, stay-at-home working. I think it has forced employers to think more about balance, work-life balance, accommodation for other aspects of a person's life. So I think it's all a process of negotiation and movement. Figuring out where the company's needs and the employees' needs can be met. There's got to be some middle ground if folks will just talk and listen.
Yes, and I think about it. It did force that negotiation, as you said. Predominantly, I think over many years, it's the employer's needs, and the employees adapted.
Right.
And this shift now
has put the employees in a stronger position.
It really has, hasn't
sure.
it? Yes, yes. So, what final thought or practice would you leave for our audience today? Something that they could work with immediately as they aspire to develop a leadership mindset and a leadership practice.
Remain true to yourself. You can't be something that you're not. And you indeed come off as phony or insincere or out of touch, whatever the occasion may end up labeling it. You've got to be yourself. You've got to know yourself. I speak to a lot of women's groups. I speak to graduation classes, and I try to let them know that, there's only one person that you have control over in this whole wide world, and that's yourself. Not your boyfriend, girlfriend, not your husband or wife, not your boss. You can't manipulate enough or structure up enough to control them. The only thing you have control over is yourself, and that includes your reaction to whatever those external factors or people have done to you, either intentionally or unintentionally. So self-control and knowing what your pathway is, where you want to be, your deep faith, your concepts about money and how you spend time. the values that you hold, how to hold them strong and solid. Or if you're going to put them on the shelf for a while, have an understanding about what you're giving that up for, and then hopefully come to a timeline at the end of that. I mean, all of us have had to put things aside due to serious illness with somebody we love, or serious occurrences to somebody we love, and we can do something to ameliorate or to comfort them, and we've got to give up something ourselves. So those will happen in life, but you're still going to have that value, and hopefully as soon as you can move it back into your mainstream, then the better off you'll be. And hopefully that your companion or whoever realizes that you haven't abandoned that value permanently, but it's just set aside temporarily, and you can come back to it.
Thank you. What incredible advice, because I think all too often when early leaders adopt a leadership role, they do a lot of pretending. They have a belief that they're supposed to be something that they're not. And I think this can prevent people from really developing the characteristics because they're pretending.
To believe that you're infallible, to believe that nobody should challenge you. I mean, you've got to set up an environment where a conversation, as opposed to a challenge, is welcome from the folks that you work with. They've got to be invested in the project, the mission, and hopefully they'll have some good ideas about how to make it better, stronger, lasting, whatever the objective might be. So not taking any advice or considering anything from anybody is, you can be the strongest leader, but you're going to be the weakest leader because you haven't, you're not going to make every decision correctly. There's downfall of a lot of leaders. You can read books about it. But there are some that realize when the downfall is beginning to happen that they've got to call on other folks to help them. You can't just double down and expect a different outcome. I think that's the definition of insanity, doing it over and over again and expect different results. So, you've got to be mindful of truly what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and allow collaboration, allow help.
Powerful, very powerful advice. Thank you again, Secretary Marshall. And I know our audience will derive tremendous value from your wisdom, experience, insights, and all of the thoughts that you've shared with us today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me, Christine Rozier, and the Irrelevant Leader podcast series. Remember this: you are more extraordinary and capable than you think. To become the leader you aspire to be, you need the right tools and support to assist you in developing and maintaining the characteristics found in great and relevant leaders. That's why I host the Irrelevant Leader podcast, direct the year-long Leadership Collaborative, and Rozier Leadership Retreats. Visit the website at christinerozier.com, that's spelled ROSIER, to learn more. Check out the podcast page for upcoming live events and interviews with amazing, relevant leaders. If you're not already on the mailing list, then please sign up to join me in this powerful network of exceptional leaders.